On July 3, 1976, Israel launched the most daring, complicated, long-range, logistically challenging, and politically volatile hostage rescue in history. The raid made history in more ways than one, and proved to the world the lengths that Israel would go to rescue its citizens. Books would be written about the event and films were made. They were well received, such as The Public Interest and the mission's worldwide notoriety, its audacious nature, and unqualified success. What caused the raid on Entebbe? How did Israel manage to execute such an elaborate plan? What was the end result? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, military veteran, historian, and author, and on this episode of Forgotten History, we will cover the most daring hostage rescue ever recorded in history, the raid on Entebbe. On June 27, 1976, Air France Flight 139 departed from Tel Aviv, Israel, destined for Paris, France, carrying 246 mainly Jewish and Israeli passengers and a 12-person crew. Landing in Athens, Greece, it picked up an additional 58 passengers, 4 being hijackers. Just after takeoff at 12:30 p.m. local time, the flight was hijacked by 2 Palestinians from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, External Operations, and by 2 Germans, Wilfried Buse and Brigitte Kuhlmann, from the Communist German Revolutionary Cells. They diverted the flight to Benghazi, Libya, where they spent 7 hours refueling. During this period, they released British-born Israeli citizen Patricia Martel, who convinced them that she was having a miscarriage. The plane left Benghazi, and at 3:15 p.m. on June 28th, it arrived at Entebbe Airport in Uganda. Once in Uganda, the group enjoyed support from Ugandan dictator Idi Amin, and at least 4 other hijackers boarded. The passengers were transferred to the transit hall of the former airport terminal under reconstruction. The hijackers separated all Israelis and several non-Israeli Jews from the larger group of passengers on June 29th, subsequently moving them into the anteroom, and the men came to visit the hostages almost daily, giving them updates and promising to use his efforts to have them freed through negotiations. The terrorists wanted a ransom of $5 million for the release of the airplane and demanded the release of 53 Palestinian and pro-Palestinian terrorists in various locations. 40 were prisoners in Israel. If these demands were not met, they said that they would start killing hostages on July 1st, 1976. Amin had been informed of the hijacking from the beginning, after the plane landed in Benghazi, and personally welcomed the terrorists at Entebbe. They were supported by Yasser Arafat, who was not only great friends with Amin, he had also been Amin's best man at his wedding. 2 days after arriving and following Amin's second visit, the 148 non-Israeli hostages were released and flown to Paris. The 94 remaining passengers and the 12-member Air France crew remained in custody, including 5 non-Israeli hostages, which included 2 ultra-Orthodox Jewish couples from the U.S. and a Belgian and a French national. Ironically, the hijackers failed to identify one Israeli military officer, a dual national, using his other passport, and he was allowed to leave. One Holocaust survivor showed hijacker Wilfried Buse his concentration camp number tattooed on his arm, and Buse shouted, "I'm no Nazi, I'm an idealist." In addition, U.S. citizen Janet Almag, Frenchwoman Jocelyne Monnier, and her boyfriend, who is Israeli, and French-Israeli dual citizen Jean-Jacques Memouni all joined the Israeli hostage group by their own choice. Members in the Israeli government discussed whether or not to give in to the demands or respond by force. But when the hijackers had threatened to kill the 106 captives if the terrorists in custody were not released, the decision was made to launch a rescue operation. the Israeli plans included dealing with Ugandan soldiers as well as the hijackers. Israel had tried all political avenues available to resolve the issue. It was reported that Israel was willing to release the prisoners in exchange if the military option was ruled out. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin wanted to pay for the hostages, but Defense Minister Shimon Peres wanted military action. One man in on the plan was Baruch Burka Bar-Lev, a retired IDF officer, as he had known Idi Amin for many years and lived in Uganda and had a strong personal relationship with him. He spoke with Amin on the phone several times to gain the release of the hostages, but without success. After Bar-Lev failed, Israel appealed to the United States, hoping to have them influence Egyptian President Anwar Sadat to get Amin to release the hostages. Attempts were made through Sadat to negotiate the release of the hostages. According to recently declassified documents, the Egyptian government under Anwar Sadat tried to negotiate with Uganda and the PLO but were unsuccessful. Under pressure, PLO chairman Yasser Arafat sent his political aide Hani al-Hassan to Uganda to negotiate with the hostage takers and with Amin. The hijackers refused to meet with him. At the July 1st deadline, the Israeli cabinet offered to negotiate with the hijackers to extend the deadline to July 4th. Amin also asked the terrorists to extend their deadline until July 4th so he could take a diplomatic trip to Port Louis, Mauritius, to officially hand over chairmanship of the Organization of African Unity to President Siwasagar Rumgalam. This was an unexpected bonus to the Israelis, since the extension allowed Israeli commandos enough time to get to Entebbe. On July 3rd at 1830, the Israeli cabinet approved the rescue mission presented by Major General Yakatil Adam and Brigadier General Dan Shamran. Shamran was appointed as the operational commander. He and his commandos had been preparing the entire time, just in case they were given the green light. Codenamed Operation Thunderbolt was to begin at nightfall on July 4th, 1976, when Israeli C-130 Hercules transports flew 100 commandos over 2,500 miles to Uganda. But part of the planning required a solution, and that was refueling the C-130s on the return leg of the trip. The Israelis did not have the ability to aerially refuel the aircraft. They appealed to several East African nations, including Kenya, which was the most logical choice. All the nations contacted were sympathetic but unwilling to help, fearing retribution by Amin or the Palestinians. The Israeli government managed to get the British government involved through Sir Maurice Oldfield, who was then chief of MI6. He contacted the Kenyan Minister of Agriculture, Bruce Mackenzie, who was a longtime contact. Mackenzie convinced Kenyan President Jomo Kenyatta to allow Mossad to gather critical intelligence in country prior to the operation and to allow the commandos to land and refuel at what is today Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi. The Mossad managed to get the blueprints for the new airport, which had been built by one of the Israeli construction firms, Solel Bonet, that Amin had thrown out of the country a few years earlier. They also spoke with some of the released hostages and were able to obtain the location of the hostages still in custody and detailed information about the numbers and types of weapons carried by the terrorists and Ugandan soldiers. According to the information, the army and hundreds of civilians, including those who had built the original structure, rapidly built a partial replica of the airport terminal. They rehearsed their actions from disembarkation from the aircraft to contact to extraction day and night. Due to all of the back-channel diplomatic traffic, Uganda's ambassador to Lesotho, Isaac Lamago, while in Nairobi, apparently overheard some Kenyan Air Force officers openly discussing the possibility of Israeli action, and Kenya receiving compensation for the assistance. Lamago forwarded that information to Ugandan military commander Isaac Meliamungu. However, astonishingly, Meliamungu did not inform Amin or even act on the information, and dismissed the unverified report as gossip and gasia or rubbish. According to Amin's son, Jafar Remo, the Amin was informed directly by Lamago, and after the OAU meeting, he flew back to Uganda. Amin was apparently terrified of possible reprisals in case his troops actually fought the Israeli military, which may be why he ordered the Ugandan army not to open fire on any Israeli aircraft during a possible raid. It was also stated that Amin did not believe the Israelis could even pull such an ambitious mission off, and then decided that it was just a rumor. The Israeli force numbered 100 commandos, excluding the air crews, and was comprised of the following elements. Brigadier General Dan Shamrand commanded as overall ground commander. Colonel Ami Ayalon handled communications and support personnel. The primary 29-man assault team was led by Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Netanyahu. Commandos would assault the old terminal and rescue the hostages. Paratroopers led by Colonel Matan Vilnay would secure the civilian general airport field, clearing and securing the runways, and protection and refueling of the Israeli aircraft. The Golani Force, led by Colonel Yuri Sagi, would secure the C-130 Hercules aircraft, getting as close as possible to the terminal and boarding the hostages. They were also the reserve force should larger numbers of Ugandan soldiers be encountered. Sayeret Matkal Force, led by Major Shaul Mufaz, would secure and clear the military airstrip, destroying the squadron of MiG-jet fighters on the ground, preventing possible interceptions by the Uganda Army Air Force. They were also a blocking force in case forces arrived from Entebbe. The C-130s took off from Sharm el-Sheikh in Sinai and flew along the international flight path over the Red Sea, mostly flying at altitudes of less than 100 feet to avoid radar detection. This would burn more fuel, hence the need to refuel in Nairobi. Near the south outlet of the Red Sea, the C-130s turned further south and crossed over Ethiopia, passing west of Djibouti, then turned northeast of Nairobi, and then turned west, passing through the African Rift Valley and over Lake Victoria. The commando force landed at Entebbe on July 4th at 2300 local time, with their cargo bay doors already open. 2 converted Boeing 707 jets followed the cargo planes. The first 707 contained medical facilities and landed at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, Kenya. It was to be able to treat any wounded coming out of Uganda. The overall commander of the operation, General Yekutiel Adam, was on board the second Boeing, which circled over Entebbe Airport during the raid as a communications platform monitoring the ground operation. There were no runway lights, and one C-130 almost crashed into a drainage ditch. Out of the back of one Hercules, a black Mercedes rolled down the ramp. It was not expecting the black one, and they ordered the vehicles to stop. The first group of commandos in the lead Land Rover shot the sentries using silenced pistols. Commando in a following Land Rover fired an unsuppressed rifle. Fearing the hijackers would be alerted to their arrival, the commandos immediately drove to the terminal, and they disembarked the vehicles. The hostages were still in the main hall of the airport building directly adjacent to the runway. As the commandos entered the terminal, they shouted through a megaphone, stay down, we are Israeli soldiers," in both Hebrew and English. Tragically, 19-year-old French immigrant Jean-Jacques Maimoni, living in Israel, stood up and was killed when Mookie Betzer and another soldier mistook him for a hijacker. Hostage Pasco Cohen, 52, was also fatally wounded. Another hostage, 56-year-old Ida Borokovich, a Russian Jewish immigrant, was killed by a hijacker in the crossfire. After the commandos entered, German terrorist Wilfried Busse was the only hijacker who entered the hall and pointed his Kalashnikov rifle at the hostages, but according to hostage Ilan Hartov, he immediately came to his senses and ordered them to find shelter in the restroom. Busse was then killed by the commandos when he fired at them, but never harmed a hostage. Then an Israeli commando called out in Hebrew, "Where are the rest of them?" referring to the hijackers, and hostages pointed to a door leading to the main hall. The commandos threw several hand grenades inside, then entered the room and killed the 3 remaining hijackers. 3 C-130 Hercules unloaded armored personnel carriers to cover the force during the hour of refueling. The commandos simultaneously destroyed the MiG fighters and also conducted a sweep of the airfield to gather further intelligence. After the raid, the commandos returned to their aircraft and loaded the hostages. Ugandan soldiers fired upon them from the control tower. The commandos fired light machine guns and a rocket-propelled grenade back at the control tower, suppressing the Ugandans' fire. The commandos suffered 5 wounded and 1 killed. The dead man was Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Netanyahu. He was the older brother of future Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The mission was an overall success as the Israeli commandos killed all the hijackers and 45 Ugandan soldiers, and 11 of Uganda's MiG-17s and MiG-21s were destroyed. The mission lasted 53 minutes from touchdown to liftoff, with the assault lasting 30 minutes, rescuing 102 hostages, with 3 being killed. The hijacked aircraft's pilot, Captain Michel Bacos, was awarded the Legion of Honor from France, and the other crew members were awarded the French Order of Merit for bravery under the situation and for remaining with the passengers when they could have gone free. Once Idi Amin confirmed that Kenya had assisted, he was furious, and his famous explosive temper erupted. He ordered the Ugandan military to kill every Kenyan in Uganda. 245 Kenyans were murdered, and around 3,000 Kenyans fled Uganda. Melia Manungu had 14 soldiers arrested under suspicion of collaborating with the Israelis and placed them in Makindye barracks. He shot 12 of them with his pistol. Ugandan Army Chief of Staff Mustafa Adrisi reportedly wanted to execute Godwin Sule, the Entebbe Air Base commander, who was absent from his post during the raid. Sule had left the airbase early that day to meet a female companion at Lake Victoria Hotel on that 4th July. Only Sule's friendship with the men kept him alive. Dora Bloch, a grandmother who had been taken to the hospital earlier, was murdered by officers of the Ugandan army along with her doctors and nurses who apparently tried to intervene. In April 1987, Henry Kayemba, Uganda's Attorney General and Minister of Justice at the time, told the Uganda Human Rights Commission that Bloch had been dragged from her hospital bed and killed by 2 army officers on Amin's orders. Bloch was shot and her body was dumped in the trunk of a car that had Ugandan intelligence services number plates. Her remains were recovered near a sugar plantation 19 miles east of Kampala in 1979 after the Uganda-Tanzania War ended Amin's rule. On May 24, 1978, Kenya's agricultural minister, Bruce Mackenzie, was killed when a bomb attached to his aircraft exploded as he left a meeting with Amin. It is believed that Amin ordered the assassination of Mackenzie in retaliation for his and Kenya's involvement. Many others believe that another person aboard the plane may have been the intended target. Afterward, Mossad Chief Director Meir Amit had a forest planted in Israel in Mackenzie's name to honor him for his assistance. The United Nations Security Council convened on July 9, 1976, to consider charging Israel with an act of aggression after a complaint was filed from the chairman of the Organization of African Unity. The Council allowed Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Chaim Herzog, and Uganda's Foreign Minister, Juma Oris Abdallah, to participate, but without voting rights. UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim told the Security Council that the raid was, quote, a serious violation of the sovereignty of a member state of the United Nations, though he was fully aware that this is not the only element involved. When the world community is now required to deal with unprecedented problems arising from international terrorism, the representative from Uganda, Abdallah, alleged that the problem was almost resolved when Israel attacked, while Herzog, representing Israel, accused Uganda of direct complicity with the terrorists and working with the PLO and Arafat. The US and UK sponsored a resolution which condemned hijacking and similar terrorist acts, deplored the loss of life arising from the hijacking without any condemnation of either Israel or Uganda, reaffirmed the need to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states, and called on the international community to enhance the safety of civil aviation. However, the resolution failed to receive the required number of affirmative votes because 2 voting members abstained and 7 were absent. A second resolution sponsored by Benin, Libya, and Tanzania condemning Israel was never voted on. But the problem was that such situations required a UN resolution, but in retrospect, I can clearly see how Israel had to take the action that it did. I was very impressed, I can tell you. Israel's mission proved several things that must be remembered. They will not abandon their people. They will never forget a transgression. They will not back down in the face of terror or run from an enemy. And, most important, they will move heaven and earth just to save a single life, and that is a fact. But they will also kill any and all who would harm their people. Thanks for watching today's episode of Forgotten History. If you like this episode, please consider becoming a channel member or joining our Patreon page. This would help us offset the ever-increasing cost of production. As always, please like, share, and comment. And if you have any show ideas, please contact us, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time.